Good afternoon and welcome to the week 16 lecture video. Let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda. Okay, so I just want to review how this course is designed. Again, there is prong one, which is theory, and we get this theory through you reading the textbook, taking the quizzes, and us reviewing the quizzes in this class. Okay, prong two was going over the 5 SPSS lectures, so just reviewing the lecture notes, understanding the interpretation, and then applying those interpretations to the results section of your paper. When I essentially did the same thing, I gave you the output, and then you could go to the corresponding video and figure out how to interpret it. And of course, you had results writing templates. So that's prong two of how research methods is designed. Prong three is the actual research paper. So this is facilitated by lectures and discussion forums, right? Every single week, right? We're on week 16. So you'll have the week 16 discussion due on Sunday. Every single week, you've written a little aspect of the paper. And then the other assignments, you've submitted rough drafts of all the sections, and I've given you feedback on that. So that's how the course is designed. It's working out really well, and it has in the past. So there you go. Let's start by looking at prong one, which is theory. Let's review the quiz. Okay. Pearson product moment correlation coefficient expresses what? It expresses a linear relationship between two variables. So that's literally a definition. That's what it's doing. Suppose you read that t equals 2, degrees of freedom is 20, and p is greater than 0.05 for the difference between two means, true or false. Using conventional standards, the null hypothesis should be rejected. Okay, false, it should be retained. When p is greater than 0.05, you retain the null hypothesis. When p is less than 0.05, you reject the null hypothesis. So this would be false in this case. Which of the following will consumers of research be most concerned with when considering an analysis of variance, ANOVA test, of the null hypothesis? Okay, when you're doing inferential statistics, you're always focused on the p-value. And what's the p-value? What's the probability of me getting the sample data that I have if the null hypothesis is true? Okay, if that probability is less than 5%, then you reject the null hypothesis and you say, you know what? There must be some sort of difference. There must be some sort of relationship in the population because the probability of getting my sample data is so low. If p is greater than 0.05, okay, you're saying the probability of me getting my sample data if the null hypothesis is true, meaning there's no difference in the population, there's no relationship. You're saying it's greater than 5%. So you're like, well, I guess that's a pretty high percent. So we're just going to retain the null hypothesis and say the null hypothesis may be true. Other things may be true, but the null hypothesis may be true based on p being greater than 0.05. Okay. So that's the general logic. Researchers use two-way analysis of variance to determine what? The interaction of multiple independent variables on a dependent variable. And again, in a two-way analysis of variance, you have two independent variables with multiple levels and one dependent variable. Whereas in a one-way ANOVA, you just have one independent variable, okay, with various levels and one dependent variable. So the most we've worked with in this class would be one-way ANOVA. If a researcher fails to reject a null hypothesis, the difference in question is statistically significant. Fails to reject, so retain, not statistically significant, so false. So remember, reject, p is less than 0.05, there is a significant relationship or a significant difference, depending on the inferential statistic that you're using, okay? Retain the null hypothesis, p is greater than 0.05, there's not a significant difference. Okay, we'll do that one more time. Reject the null hypothesis, P is less than 0.05. There is a significant difference or relationship. Retain the null hypothesis, P is greater than 0.05. There's not a significant relationship or a significant difference. Again, depending on the type of inferential statistic that you're using, right? If you're looking at t-tested difference between rho and zero, which is the correlation, then you're talking about relationship. If you're looking at independent samples t-test, which is comparing two groups on some sort of outcome, so another way to say that would be two means, then you're talking about either there's a significant difference or not a significant difference. What is the name of the error researchers make when they fail to reject the null hypothesis when in fact it is the correct hypothesis? This is called a type 2 error. Which of the following is a type 1 error? Rejecting the null hypothesis when it is the correct hypothesis. A type 1 error is rejecting the null hypothesis when it is a correct hypothesis. When a researcher rejects the null hypothesis at exactly 0.05, there are how many chances in 100 that the null hypothesis is correct? 5 in 100. And again, this 0.05 represents 5%. Okay. How many dependent variables can there be in a regression model? Sorry, how many dependent variables can there be in regression models? 1. How many independent variables can there be in regression models? 2. Statistical significance addresses whether a difference is reliable in light of what? Random errors. What is the definition of effect size? The size of a difference when it is expressed on a standardized scale. Some of these I don't want to get into because they're rather long explanations. So definitely send me an email if you have any questions. Using Cohen's suggested descriptors, a value of D of 0.2 would be described as what? Small. When we're looking at Cohen's D, 0.2 is small, 0.5 is medium, 0.8 is large. If we're looking at the effect size R, 0.1 is going to be small, 0.3 is medium or moderate, and 0.5 is large. According to this topic, what are the two measures of effect size that are very, very widely reported? I literally just covered them. So Cohen's D and then effect size R. So you got it. Okay. So we reviewed the quiz. You all completed the week 15 discussion. So that was on limitations and future directions. So the next round of feedback is going to come in the form of tables and figures and the discussion rough draft, which you can see is due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Okay, so that being said, this week I'll go through all of the resubmissions for the other rough drafts, and I will either give you another revise and resubmit or give you full credit so you can move on. Okay, so I'll make sure as we're coming down to the finish line, I guess is a good way of saying it, I'll make sure I'm on top of that and I get you your feedback quick. So today we're going to talk about the abstract of the paper. And this is really the last piece of the paper. Hold on, let me actually share properly. Okay. Okay, let's look at my notes here. So an abstract, and again, this is in the research paper overview, which is in the week 16 folder on Canvas. So 150 to 250 word summary of your paper in an accurate and concise manner. This is key. It needs to be concise, okay? you're bound by this word limit. Okay, you're going to start off with your purpose statement. Okay, which is at the end of the first part of your introduction section. Okay, and then I'm going to have you note your hypotheses, right? You all have 3 hypotheses, so note your hypotheses here. Purpose statement, hypotheses. Okay. And then as you might expect, the next part is the method section, but this is all you have to say. You just have to make a participant's statement, okay? In this case, this is just an example, right? So you already have your participant section, so you know what you're writing. But for example, you would just say 416 students from an introductory psychology course at a Southern California university were administered several questionnaires. And then you restate your findings here. So again, I don't want you to include any statistics. What you're actually putting here, it says results, but a better way of saying that would be, this is going to be the first part of your discussion section. Because remember, in the first part of your discussion section, you're restating your findings in a simple way, stripping out all of this statistical language, okay? Well, you can use terms like no significant difference or significant difference, but when I say stripping out the statistical language, I mean you're not going to include sample size, you know, your t, your p-values, stuff like that. Okay. And then the last part of the discussion is just a statement really related to, in this case, it says potential clinical and community intervention. But what I want you to say is this. So I'll put in words right now. These findings, right, that you just mentioned right here, these findings are discussed in terms of limitations and future research directions. Like, once again, so this discussion statement should say, these findings are discussed in terms of limitations and future research directions. And again, that is exactly what you are doing in your discussion section. You're noting limitations and then these future research directions. Okay, great. Okay, so that's all for the abstract. So what's due on Sunday? Let's take a look. The week 16 discussion. Okay, write your abstract. Okay, be sure to watch the week 16 lecture video before you begin, which is this video. Respond to 2 other students. Compare what they wrote to what you learned in the week 16 lecture video. Also, please let them know if something is unclear, and if possible, suggest a correction. Okay, and this is important. And again, you know, it's important to give honest feedback, but make sure it's in a respectful manner. Okay, it's fine to be direct, but just make sure it's in a respectful manner. So that's all you're doing for the week 16 discussion. And then you have the tables and figures rough draft, tables / figures and discussion rough draft. So let's find that. As Canvas loads, give it a second. It's almost there. It'll make it. There you go. So this is exactly what you would expect, okay? Remember, you need 1 table and or figure for each analysis. So you need a total of 3 tables / figures. So you could have 1 table and 2 figures, or 3 figures or 3 tables. It just depends on your analyses. Okay, and then you just have to include all the discussion elements as we did them. And what we did for this first section, I know it says some other things here that you can do, like discuss your findings in relation to prior studies. All I had you do for part 1 of the discussion was just to restate your 3 findings, stripping away that statistical language. So that's part 1. If you want to try to do this, bring back in past studies and relate what you found in personality and gay marriage attitudes to to the literature that you found, right, that you summarized in your introduction, you can do that. But again, the minimum is what I just said. Limitations, remember you're noting this section with a heading, right? And you're saying these are my 3 limitations, and you're providing at least a 1-sentence explanation per limitation. Same for future directions. Make sure you note that as a header. And then for each of your limitations, propose a future research idea and explain it. Again, just don't state something, make sure it's clear what you're talking about. Okay. And remember, you need to find and create article summaries for 10 articles. Okay. For the 10 articles you need for the introduction section of your paper. So remember, part 2 of your introduction section, the literature review, you need to have 10 article summaries, right? And you're just doing those article summaries and you're dropping them in. Okay. So that's all I have. Feel free to email me if you have any questions and/or come to office hours. Okay. Have a great afternoon and evening. Take care.